everyone, I'm Rihanna from A Frugal Life, and today I'm going to be talking to you about frugal things that we did in the 1980s. So I'm what's known as a Generation Xer. Generation Xers were born approximately between 1965 and 1980. Boomers were born the generation before that. So what we did in the 1980s is basically what us as Generation Xers did and our boomer parents did to stay frugal, resourceful, and survive some hard economic times. I think that some of these things are just for fun. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do them now or not want to do them now. Some of these things we can take as inspiration for these hard economic times and what we can maybe turn them into now. So back in the 80s, we had vinyl records, record players, and eventually tapes with tape cassette players. We didn't have online streaming digital video or online streaming digital audio that we could listen to all at a time. We had to buy sections of music by artist. I know it sounds crazy for you, this generation, of only 10 to 13 songs at a time. So in order to increase that collection, we often swapped records and tapes. And one of these things that we did to stay frugal was to swap things. You could actually play the record and record it onto a tape and then give the person back their record if we already had tapes at that time, or if it was before tapes, we would just swap records back and forth. Once we got tape cassettes, we actually used to tape music off of the radio. So we would wait for hours for that particular song to come on, press record real fast, and record a song. It might still have the DJ talking on it. It might have some background music or background audio from the room that we were in. But that's how we got our music back in the 80s. One of the things that people really did a lot was DIY haircuts. A lot of the times the mom of the family would cut everybody's hair, and only she would go to the beauty parlor, or she would even cut her own hair. My grandma cut her own hair all the time in the 80s. My aunt actually had a beautician's license, and she used to cut all of our hair. But even if you didn't have a beautician's license, cutting your own hair was a thing back then, and definitely cutting your kids' hair. Nobody paid for their kids' hair to be cut. They cut their kids' hair themselves with clippers or scissors or whatever it may be, which is why you see some of those funny haircuts in old 80s style pictures. This is actually something you can do now. You can watch how to cut your own hair on YouTube, and as long as you're okay with having a simple haircut, you could definitely cut your own hair. I've been cutting my own hair for a long time. Maybe once every 2 years I go have a professional trim, or if I want my bangs cut in, then I'll have a professional trim. Other than that, I just trim it myself. So I'm still living in the 80s with those DIY haircuts. Once again, I'm going to say sorry for my dog snoring in the background. Just can't get her to leave this room when I'm recording. So one of our ways to entertain ourselves back then was VHS tapes and rental marathons. So we would go down to Blockbuster with our parents, and they would rent 3 or 4 VHS rentals. They were one movie on one tape, and you had to return them the next day or get a fine. So we would have a marathon and watch those all Friday night or Saturday night with a bunch of popcorn. It was a great thing to do with the family. You could invite friends and neighbors over. Movies were just not available to stream at an instant like they are now, so you had to plan it out. Pick your movie, hope it was not out of stock at the video store, and actually watch it all together. It was actually a fun social event and activity that people looked forward to. This is something we could bring back now, especially since we can stream things at the snap of a finger online. So we could invite our friends and family over and stream movies, or binge watch Harry Potter together or something like that, and watch a whole bunch of movies, have some popcorn in, and save a bunch of money. It's great and even more fun if you invite friends and neighbors over. So have a streaming movie marathon, just like we did back when we had Blockbuster and VHS tapes. So next we're going to talk about coupon books, which were both a school fundraiser and a way to make money for some people, and a way for us to save. So they had these little coupon books that had local businesses 2-for-1 meals for local restaurants, video stores, Blockbuster, things like that. You would have a little coupon book, and it would have all sorts of things from your town in it. So school kids would go door to door selling these for their classroom, and they would make some money off of them. Sometimes people got part-time jobs selling these, and they would make some money off of them. But it was a trend every year to buy your coupon book, even from the school kids or the door-to-door people, and that way you had some coupons all year long to use for your local places. I was using these coupon books all the way into the late 90s, early 2000s. I haven't seen them after COVID for a long time. It may just be the area I'm in now. You may still have these coupon books in the area you are now. The last coupon company I remember doing it is called the Entertainment Book. So you might look for something like that online and see that if you have them in your area. I know they don't have them in my area now. So next is handmade Halloween costumes. This is out of season right now to talk about, but we never had a Halloween costume, even the bits and bobs that go with the Halloween costumes that was purchased from the store. Everything was handmade, ghosts, sheets, gypsies, probably lots of things that were not so politically correct back then, but every single thing. If you wanted a Halloween costume, your mom made it, or your grandma made it, or you made it with your siblings. You did not have store-bought Halloween costumes. So that's super frugal. That's something they should definitely bring back. The fun of Halloween was coming up with your Halloween costume and making it together with your family. So just buying those store-bought ones is not quite as fun as it used to be, and it's more expensive than it used to be. So number 6 is thrift store fashion. I still go in for it now. When I used to be able to shop, I get a little bit of extra money. That is still where I would shop for clothing, but thrift store fashion was big in the 80s. That was the fashion. You would go and buy some used or vintage items to make up your outfits. So thrift store fashion was just naturally in back then, which is great for frugal people. Also, in addition to that, were hand-me-downs. So especially with kids, obviously, if you had more than one kid, your oldest kid was handing down to the next kid, to the next kid, to the next kid, and nobody under the oldest kid was getting new clothes. So hand-me-downs were a big thing. We would even hand down between genders as well, as long as they were generic, which we had a lot of generic things back then, like polos and jeans. So hand-me-downs were a big thing. They are, I think, still a big thing now with people who are low income or trying to save money. Number 8 was making your own lunch. I don't ever remember buying lunch as a kid until I got to be teenage and had my own money from a job. Making your lunch was just how it was done. Usually the mom or dad would make lunch for everybody, but sometimes older siblings would make lunch as well. And then when you got older, you would make your own lunch. So bringing your own lunch to school, to work, everything was a way of saving money. We know it's a frugal thing to do now, but people still like to splurge and go out to eat at times. So making your own lunch is a big thing that we did in the 80s, and it was just a standard fare for the day. Was everybody had a sack lunch, or if you were a kid with a mom or dad that had little spare money, you had really cool lunch boxes. So I will put some examples up above of what an 80s lunchbox looked like. Number 9 was cable TV hacking. Definitely illegal. Don't try to do it now. I don't even think you could do it now with all of the technology that we have now. But cable TV used to, I know it still does now sometimes, but used to only come through a cable in your wall, and it was super easy to hack the boxes. I had neighbors who hacked the boxes to get the paid cable TV channels. You could also share with your neighbor, so you could split off the cable between neighbors and each have cable and only pay for it once. So this was a big illegal frugal thing to do back then, but it was totally in the 80s to hack the cable TV channels. So given how prominent they are now, nobody even thinks that this was a new thing at one time. But discount stores like Walmart, Kmart, Target, places like that came into prominence in the 80s. Before that, we were shopping out of catalogs, we were shopping at Sears and department stores. These big box discount stores just came around in the 80s and that time period, and they were just gaining prominence then, at least. I'm not sure when they actually came out. So shopping at those type of stores, if you had them in your area, was a thing to save money. So that was a big thing back then. It's obviously still a big thing now. Some people don't like it because of the ethics of big box stores, but it is a way to save a lot of money if you're going shopping and if you want to follow the 80s rule of saving money. Number 15 is sharing or bartering. I mean, this happened way before the 80s, but it was big in the 80s, at least in the neighborhood I was in. Was maybe one person had a lawnmower out of every 3 houses, and you would share that lawnmower between the 3 houses and just swap things back and forth. If your dad needed a chainsaw, if your mom needed a KitchenAid, you would definitely swap things back and forth. They had community potlucks where they all shared dishes. They had neighborhood block parties. All of these things happened in the 80s that don't happen now because of technology, and more people are staying in the house. They don't go outside. They don't socialize with their neighbors. They don't share as much with their neighbors as they did in the past. So I would love this to come back. They should definitely have sharing with your neighbors be a thing again. They should have barter sites. I know they probably do in big cities. They don't have in the area that I'm in, where you can share things with your neighbors. I know they have libraries now where you can rent things like baking dishes and things like that, or check out baking dishes and things like that. But this is one of the things that was very popular in the 80s, especially in the neighborhood I lived in, was things that cost a lot of money would just be shared throughout the neighborhood, and you would just have to keep track of who had it at that time. So this is an awesome community thing to do. Maybe you can get it started with your neighborhood. Number 16 is the drive-in movies, which was super cheap back then. So even if they have them now, they're definitely not cheap. But you used to be able to do carload. I don't know if it was by the day of the week or if it was always that way, but you could pile as many people as you could in your car and pay just $10 or something even less than that for a whole carload of people to watch a drive-in movie. So drive-in movies were big in the 80s. It was a cool thing to do, to go out and do with your family. It was obviously a date night thing. It was very neat to watch it on the big screen, but in the privacy of your own car. There was the trek to the snack station and back, the trek to the bathrooms and back, which was always fun, especially if you were kids. So drive-in movies was a big frugal entertainment thing back then. So the next one is fixing and refurbishing old stuff. Obviously, frugal people do that now, but everybody was doing it back then. So you didn't just throw stuff away. Things were not as disposable as they are now. They didn't have things that you would just have for a season and throw away. Things were kept for a very long time. Even through generations, you would pass down cutlery and baking pans and things like that. So if things broke, especially if it was technology or a kitchen gadget or something like that, there were places where you could bring your items to be repaired, or a dad in the neighborhood could repair them, your dad could repair them. It was big to just repair things and fix things instead of throwing them away. So that's the last thing I have on my list today. If you want, I could do a part 2 of this because I have a lot more things that we did in the 80s that were frugal that maybe you don't do now or just fun to talk about now or things like that. If you want to see a part 2, let me know. I would love to hear from my Gen Xers and boomers out there. I know I have a big section of my audience that's in those generations. What your family did, either whether you were a kid or an adult at the time, that was totally frugal and super 80s and on trend at that time. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, and I will talk to you again in the next video.